Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark. Glad to be with you for another master class session. I want to take the time during this training call to talk about changing the culture within your organization to enhance results. And this is an important topic, as all the topics that we discuss are important. But this is important, particularly if you're going through a change management process, particularly if you're thinking through what change looks like within your organization. And there are a variety of people who are joining our training session who are part of what we are talking about today. And so I'm going to do my best to kind of summarize and engage you all in a conversation around change, culture, what it takes to do such a thing, why it's important to go through the change management process, but also the output of all this. The reason why we're even having this conversation, the reason why this is even critical to us at this point is because changing culture is the result, is the output of something very specific happening within our organization. You're taking this course, you're engaged in this conversation, you're engaged in this masterclass because you are getting ready to, or you are preparing for some sort of change that is to come. And as you make that adjustment, as you prepare for that adjustment, rather, as you start to position yourself, position your team, position your stakeholders for the change, there are going to be questions about how do we make this happen? How do we do this? And so I want to just take the time to have this conversation with you today. We're going to cover three things about how to change the culture to enhance results. I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that we're going through the change process because we want different results. We want very specific outcomes. And your outcomes may, in fact, be tied to a couple of things. You may be looking to get more results for your customers, whatever industry you're in or focus area that you have. You may be focusing on enhancing results for the customers. You may be looking to enhance results for your stakeholders, board members, partners, etc. You may be looking to enhance fundraising results, right? Bringing in more money, expanding resources, plugging financial holes that currently exist, etc. And then in other cases, it just may be purely changing the culture because you want a different work culture. You want a different way of doing business. You want a different way of engaging with your colleagues, your team members, your staff members, etc. So let's jump into this course and see what comes out of it, right? So here's the first thing. We're talking about changing the culture to enhance results. The first thing that you got to establish is a vision. You got to have a cultural vision. Now, as leaders, as influencers of organizations, having a vision is necessary. It's a part of, it is the requirement that we must possess and maintain as a part of our work. Having a vision in general for the organization, the teams we lead, the projects we lead, the results we're trying to obtain is so essential because through the vision that we possess, our teams, our partners, our stakeholders, they respond in kind and figure out where they align with that vision to provide the right response that's necessary for them to do their job, for them to experience success and find success as well. And so, in any program you take, any certification program you take, any coaching, consulting you receive, you will always hear a conversation about vision. Now, I want to kind of delineate just a little bit the general idea of having a vision for your team and the idea of having a cultural vision. I'm suggesting that there need to be multiple visions that you deploy under your leadership within your organization and within your team. And part of having multiple visions is not to say you're having disparate visions that are competing against each other within your organization. But what I'm saying is having multiple visions is actually the process of having a singular thought, a singular view of the future, and its variations or variant outputs that are applicable to multiple persons on the team. If you're leading an organization and you have multiple departments or divisions that are a part of the organizational structure, the organization is governed by a singular vision to accomplish X. How everyone plugs into the vision varies depending on their discipline and the work that they are doing. This is where I'm referring to having multiple visions that plug into a singular vision. So if you have a vision of um, decreasing unemployment in your community, that is a loaded vision by itself. But there are several steps that need to be taken. And so every department that's a part of fulfilling that vision needs to contribute to the development of that vision, and they must have a vision that feeds into that. So, for example, you want to decrease unemployment in your community. One department, let's say the fundraiser department, has a vision of increasing revenue that supports employment training and employment subsidies for underemployed or unemployed job seekers. Certainly, that vision helps decrease unemployment. Let's say you have another department that focuses on job training, and their vision is to ensure that all job candidates or all job seekers have the requisite soft and hard skills to compete, obtain, and maintain employment. That certainly contributes to the vision of decreasing unemployment in your community, so on and so on and so on. Now, beyond that example of some of the tangible things you can think of when it comes to having a cultural vision or having a vision at large, I want to submit to you that you also want to have a vision not just for the work you're doing, but you want to have a vision for the culture that you want to establish. Have a vision for the culture you want to establish. Now, I have worked with a number of organizations over the years. And for a while, for a number of my customers, they have expressed difficulty in understanding why culture matters. They've expressed difficulty understanding why this should even be a focus ahead of any other thing they should focus on because they think that fundraising is better and more important than culture. They think that program outcomes is more important than culture. Dare I submit to you that without culture, there is nothing to fundraise for? Dare I submit to you that without culture, there's no program to operate. There's no standard that you are establishing or uplifting. Culture is the behavioral characteristics. It is the fabric of an organization that the organization defaults to regardless of the circumstance. The default behavior, the default way of thinking, the default way of doing business is the culture of the organization. So, as you are surmising, in order to adjust the culture, you have to change the defaults. Defaults are always going to be in place for any person and for any organization, but you got to adjust the default. What is the backfall? What is the backdrop? What is kind of the dependency the organization has? How do you adjust the dependencies to change from one dependency to the next? This is what you got to work on as you establish a cultural vision and as you establish an infrastructure that allows people to buy into a cultural vision. So let me ask you, what is the default that you currently have or notice within your organization? Okay. What is that default that you currently see? Clearly, as you answer that question, that default, you may not like that default at all. You may not appreciate, you may not uh, value that default because that default is not getting you the results. So when you define that default that exists now, the question that you got to wrestle with is what is the default you want the organization to have in the future? Yeah. What is the default you want your organization to have in the future? This is important. This is deeply important for you to answer because again, we've established the fact that a default is normal within any organization and with any human agent. We all have defaults. So instead of getting people to not have a default, instead of getting people to be more dynamic, and when in reality that's a hard lift, if not an impossible lift, how about you consider changing the defaults? Okay. So maybe there is a default that says we have poor customer service, regardless of the customer. We're not good at customer service. Well, maybe you want to change that default to saying, hey, we want a culture of customer service that's much, much better, much more inviting, much more thoughtful, much more inclusive, etc. Maybe you have a default within your organization that says we do programming one way. So you want to adjust the default to say, hey, maybe our default is programming can have a baseline, but programming can be delivered in a variety of ways, right? So instead of trying to change people, change the default, change the target, change the goal that people are trying to achieve. So I hope that that is starting to get the juices flowing for you. When as we're talking about, you got to have a cultural vision. So not only do you want to change the defaults, you also want to take a look at what are the norms that you want to exist within the organization, whether it's behavioral norms, decision norms, functional norms, programmatic norms, etc. So reset your defaults. What type of norms do you want to see present within your organization? And what expectations do you want people to live up to at all times? What expectations do you want to see your team, your colleagues, your staff to live up to at all times? When you combine default, norms, expectations together, you can begin to articulate a cultural vision. You can begin to articulate a set of morals, a set of standards, a set of values that define and describe what you want to see happen within your organization and what you want to see happen within the teams that you are leading. Okay, so I hope you guys are still hanging in there with me. We're talking about changing the culture to enhance results. Number one, we just covered you got to have a cultural vision. Number two, you got to strategize how to achieve this cultural vision. Okay, after you establish this cultural vision and put it in place, you have to strategize how to achieve this cultural vision. And I can't stress enough, and for those of you that have had conversations with me, you know how much I stress the importance of strategizing, planning, organizing, structuring your thoughts, structuring the way you make decisions, structuring the way you perform. Strategy is just key in all facets of being a solid leader and getting results for your organization. Remember, performance is the second fastest way to raise money for your organization. Performance leads to ongoing results, impact, revenue. It drives change. It drives recognition and awareness of what you do. And so, in order to get results and performance and to enhance results and performance, you got to strategize how you're going to make this cultural vision a reality. The reason why you want to strategize is because people are people. Human agents are always going to struggle with change. Even your best human agents, even your best team members, even your best staff members, they are going to struggle with change. And if you're not planning for that struggle, that wrestling match, that back and forth, the difficulty of understanding that people will have with the vision you're going to lay out, then you're going to find yourself being responsive to all types of issues, all types of complaints. You're going to find yourself responsive to all types of woulda, coulda, shouldas, or what are they doing, or who do they think they are. Those things are going to happen anyway. So you have to strategize for all the roadblocks. You got to strategize for all the challenges. You got to strategize for all the difficulties. You got to strategize for everything that you know everything you know will happen as a result of implementing a cultural vision. Okay? So let's kind of walk through some concepts of what to strategize for. Now, maybe we should talk about how to strategize, right? Let's talk about a little bit about how to strategize, and then let's talk about what to strategize for. So the strategy template that we use involves number one, articulating where you are right now. So when you talk about where you are right now, you want to talk about the culture, the mindset, the ideals, the philosophy, the behavioral defaults of your team. Next, when it comes to strategy, you want to look at where you want to go. What do you want to see happen culturally, right? This goes back to number one in our teaching today. What is your cultural vision? The number three in the strategy process, you got to talk about how to get there. What steps do we need to take? And then number four, you want to talk about measuring progress. Okay. So again, the strategy template is what is the reality right now? Number two, where you want to go? Number three, how do we get there? Number four, measuring progress. And so when we talk about what to strategize for, I want to just kind of run through a couple of thoughts that come to mind. This isn't exhaustive at all, but I want to at least start to whet your appetite and your thought patterns about what to strategize for. You want to strategize for the fact that people struggle with change. We talked about that a bit. People are entrenched in their norms, they are entrenched in expectations that they have set for themselves. They are entrenched in a routine every day. People come to work to fulfill that routine, and any change and adjustment to that routine causes difficulty because people plan for routines. It's normal human behavior. So you want to plan for or strategize for the struggle with change. You want to strategize for the dissenters, people who are going to disagree, and not only disagree, but disagree publicly and loudly. There are always going to be folks on your team who are going to be the loudest to say why something is broken, why something isn't going to work, why something is a terrible idea. And here's a little trick for you. The next time somebody dissents publicly and loudly, ask them, well, what would you do different given the following circumstances? See what they say. You'll notice that the response will be either absent or lacking. Okay? So you want to strategize for the struggle with change. You want to strategize for dissenters. You want to strategize for the tweeners. These are the people who understand why we're going through this cultural shift. They understand the cultural vision, but they aren't sure how they feel about it. Not because they feel any way strongly for it or against it. They're just in between. The tweeners are the people that you're going to have to work the hardest to convince and work with to bring on the journey to shifting a culture within your organization to get results. Because the tweeners are liable to go with the dissenters or the supporters. And so that's where you want to spend most of your time convincing and working with the tweeners. Because when you convince the tweeners to come be on your side and be a part of what you're building, that continues to build your majority of support. And from a leadership standpoint, you got to figure out how to always maintain the leverage to influence outcomes. You're the leader, you're the visionary, you're the one responsible for getting results, meeting outcomes, etc. You got to convince the tweeners to be on your side. Okay? So we're strategizing for those who struggle with change. We're strategizing for those who are dissenters. We're strategizing for the tweeners. You also want to strategize for the supporters, right? So you may be asking yourself, why do we want to strategize for them? You want to strategize for them because it's it you can easily lose a supporter if you don't go through the process of making sure their support is secure, if you don't go through the process of making sure they are equipped with the tools and the language to be the cheerleaders you need them to be in your absence. A supporter who doesn't know how to articulate what's going on and why we're doing this will be quickly labeled as someone who's just agreeing to agree, and they will be easily dismissed by other stakeholders and team members. So you don't want to cause your supporters to go out and be your cheerleader for this cultural change without equipping them with the tools, resources, and information that they need to help this cultural vision come to a reality. Now, there are more things to possibly consider that you can strategize for, such as bumps in the road, such as partners engaging in some sort of adversarial activity to disrupt the changes you're going through, such as loss of funding in the middle of a cultural shift and change, such as loss of organizational support, such as loss of support and recognition from consumers who once supported your work and no longer support your work. The list can go on and on and on. But as you process through this particular masterclass, take inventory of a complete list of things you can strategize for. Go back to what we talked about, how to strategize, right? The 4 steps: what, where, how, and measure. Then do that process. Go through that process of strategizing for each of the things on your list. Now, just to kind of close the loop on this second tip about changing the culture to enhance results, you want to strategize how to achieve the cultural vision. Once you make a list of what you're strategizing for, you now have to stay focused and disciplined on following that strategy so that you can begin to see the fruit of your labor. Now, I'm going to repeat a term and repeat a statement that is intended to help you think through the strategy process. Is not meant to discourage you, but is intended to help you think through. And here's a statement: be stubborn about the vision, but flexible about the execution. Okay? The strategy you develop is designed to help you get your thoughts out of your mind about how to make this vision a reality. What you cannot account for in your strategy document are the unknowns. There are unknown factors that going to unfold while you're going through this journey, and you won't know what they are until they happen. So you can't account for that. So you got to view your strategy for achieving the cultural vision as the steps you're willing to take to make this a reality, but you need to be open minded and flexible enough that the actual execution of the strategy may differ from what you wrote down. Okay? I am not, and I want to have a distinguishing, I want to distinguish here um, between not having a plan and being reckless and going with the flow versus having a plan and making adjustments to the plan based upon current situations, current factors that are forcing you to adjust the plan. If you are having these experiences that are causing you to reconsider your plan, you don't just want to go with the flow. You want to recognize the moment, recognize the season, recognize the circumstances. Take that recognition, go back to your plan, adjust it accordingly, and continue to follow the plan. And when new things pop up, again, recognize what's going on. Take that recognition, go back to the plan, tweak the plan, and keep going forward. The plan is the blueprint. The plan is the blueprint. Be stubborn about the vision. Be flexible about the execution. It'll save you a whole lot of stress. It'll save you a whole lot of heartache as you seek to change the culture to enhance results. So I hope you guys are still hanging in there with me, and I hope you guys are processing through this with me. Again, we're talking about changing the culture to enhance results. Number one, we talked about you got to have a cultural vision. That is key. Number two, you got to strategize how to achieve the cultural vision. And then lastly, you got to model and monitor the culture you want. You have to model and monitor the culture you want. Now, You may have seen in previous circumstances or previous team environments leaders who want you to do as they say and not as they do. And if you've been in that circumstance professionally or personally, we all know how that story ends. We all know that people actually do what the leader does. They rarely follow what the leader says. When there's an incongruent connection between your words and your behavior, you are creating dissension in the ranks, and you are slowing down any potential of success you could realize with implementing the cultural vision that you have. Okay? There needs to be a deep connection with your words and a deep connection with your actions. The intent behind having a connection is to ensure that both your words and actions are supporting each other. And so if a team member, a colleague, a stakeholder chooses to ignore either your words or your behavior and chooses to acknowledge your words or your behavior, there's always a parallel. You'll find there are a group of people who will ignore your words but will simply follow your pattern of behavior. And if they choose to follow your pattern of behavior and not your words, what you would hope is that your behavior, what your goal should be, is that your behavior should be completely consistent with what you are speaking. There are people on your team who are visual learners, which is why they follow behavior over words. There are people that need to see an example. There are people that need to see a sample. There are people that need to see the blueprint of what you're talking about before they can truly understand what you're selling. And then there are other people who can go off of theory and understand words and they can visualize without any example or blueprint what you're saying. And they may never look at your behavior, but they may focus exclusively on your words. What you want to account for is the various learning styles that exist within your team. Therefore, your words need to parallel your behavior. Your words need to parallel behavior. In short, you need to model the vision that you want to introduce, and you need to model the culture that you want the team to possess, to digest, and to execute. That modeling process is so key. You can't have any days off. You can't take a break. And don't get me wrong, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have your human moments. And when that happens, simply call yourself out for being a bad actor. I have found that to be so helpful that when I have my moments of failure, my moments of going against the cultural norm, first of all, you want people to say to you, that's out of character for you. Okay, you want people to acknowledge that that behavior, that moment of that lapse that you had is out of character because you're so consistent. But you also want to reinforce the culture even when you make mistakes to say, hey, this is what I did. This was against what we agreed to as a team. I need to call myself out, and y'all need to be strong enough to call me out too when I make a mistake or go against the standard. And by doing that, by calling yourself out, you are still modeling the culture that you want to obtain and institute in your team. You're letting people know that this culture is not bigger, or I'm not bigger than the culture. My role and who I am is not bigger than the culture. The culture means everything. Whether I'm present or not, whether I'm leading or not, the culture means everything. So you got to make the commitment to model the culture you want. Also, in addition to modeling, you got to monitor. And I just gave you an example of how you monitor yourself. Be aware, be self aware of your own behaviors, be self aware of your own responses to things, your own moral code, and how that supports, falls in line with the culture. But not only monitor yourself, you got to monitor the implementation of the culture of your team. That means you have to become consistently comfortable with identifying behaviors, actions, functions that are the antithesis of the culture. Now, some people may feel like you are being super negative. I'm not sure how to respond to that. If you're looking at the culture and you're looking at the way people are behaving and you're noticing that the behavior is not aligned with the culture, there needs to be a response. There needs to be a reaction. There needs to be some sort of acknowledgement that what you're doing or what we are doing is against the culture that we have established. So you're going to have to wrestle with how to balance being accused of being negative with monitoring the culture, course correcting often, consistently on a regular basis. You can't course correct once a year. You can't course correct once every 6 months. You got to course correct every day, every moment of the day. Maybe you get better at doing it in a more positive, affirming way, but you got to course correct. People got to know before you even open your mouth, okay, you know what? You know he's going to say this. You know she's going to say this. You know how they're going to respond. Let's take a break. Let's rewind and reset because I don't want to hear their mouth. I want to hear them come at me about this. You know how they are about this. When you have your team saying that stuff about you know you've implemented a culture. The question is it the culture that you want to happen? So we went through these three things about how to change the culture to enhance results. When you go through a cultural change, you got to have a cultural vision, you got to strategize how to achieve the cultural vision, and you got to model and monitor the culture you want. When you implement these three steps here, you'll start to what you should be doing at this point, whether it's prior or during or after, this culture shift should be a part of a journey you're going on to get some sort of outcome. And this is where we started the class. What is the outcome that you want? This is the reason why we're going through this cultural shift. You want better outcomes or better results for your customers. You want better results for the organization. You want more revenue, either more new or expansive revenue. You want more support, you want more recognition, you want more awareness, whatever you want, whatever results you want, the cultural shift you're going through should be an effort you're going through to lead to the enhancement of results that you want. Okay? This is critical. So I hope that these tips help you on your journey of engaging in cultural change, how to think about cultural change, why it's important to the operation of your nonprofit, the operation of your team, your department, why changing the culture is important to the revenue generation process, the fundraising process. All of this contributes to what you are doing, and that is leading a nonprofit. This is a masterclass for nonprofit leaders, right? And part of your leadership, whether you're leading for results, we're leading for program outcomes, we're leading for revenue and fundraising efforts, part of it is changing the culture to get the results you want and to enhance results for your organization, your customers, your stakeholders, and your partners. I hope this was helpful. I hope that you rewind this and you process this course and that you get the results that you are looking for your organization.